than conventional church buildings. And so as missionaries, our job is to indigenize afresh the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ and take it to the people. For you know, the heart of the gospel commission says, go. It doesn't say, come to the building. Let's move on to session 2, how Simple Church works. Here we're going to go behind the scenes. I'm going to explain to you the infrastructure. There will be a little bit of a learning curve, so it may seem complicated, but anytime you have a new learning curve, it's all brand new. But once you understand the basic infrastructure, which is actually quite simple, you will have a good handle on an overview. Remember, this is an introductory presentation. I'm not going to go into all the details. It's just to acquaint you with the big picture. I'd like to start with a paradigm change, though. Paradigm changes are significant. When the world realized that our world was no longer flat, but round, that was a paradigm change. Paradigm changes are hard to adjust to because human nature wants to settle in and be comfy and cozy. That's the way we are. But I want you to begin to take off one hat and put on a brand new way of thinking, a brand new hat. And to help make this transition, I want to show a video clip. This is a very fast video clip. I'm sure we have a number of fishermen who are watching. This video clip will depict the attitude of a paradigm change. So the conventional, traditional fishermen who have a fishing pole in hand, as they are confronted with a new way to do fishing, especially notice the attitude that is expressed on their face. It's priceless, so pay attention very, very closely. Here we go. Did you catch the attitude that was expressed in the faces of those fishermen? It's priceless, and it captures how we often respond when faced with a whole different way to do something. Let's take 5 minutes, especially those of you in a group. Go ahead and pause this video presentation and address these 2 questions in your group. What is the message in this video clip? And how does this relate to the church? See you back in about 5 minutes. Well, welcome back. Many of you have heard of George Barna. George Barna, whose picture is on your screen, used to be an atheist, and a number of years ago he became a Christian. While he was an atheist, maybe agnostic, he was a politician writer, and when he became a Christian, he put all of his tools and giftedness into tracking the trends of Christianity in North America. In 2005, George Barna wrote Revolution. It was this book that kind of shook up Christianity as it identified some major shifts in the trends and cultures. And it was this book that introduced me to house churches, the whole concept, what we have ended up calling Simple Church. House churches go by a number of names: Simple Church, House Church, Home Church, Mini Church, Micro Church. Greenhouse is another expression, Organic Church. In this book, Revolution, George Barna identifies and describes a growing number of people. As of 2005, it was 20 million Christians who were leaving conventional church. Now this is the kicker. They were leaving conventional church for the purpose of going to find God. In fact, early on in this book, George Barna says, and I quote, "It," referring to this revolution, "is on track to become the most significant recalibration of the American church body in more than a century." Later on in this book, George Barna makes an amazing statement. I want us to look at it and ponder it as we get ready to move into the nuts and bolts of what's going on. I quote, "The new revolution differs in that its primary impetus is not salvation among the unrepentant, but the personal renewal and recommitment of believers." See, they're going to find God. The dominant catalyst is people's desperation for a genuine relationship with God. It doesn't matter if these people have been Christians and in conventional church for 5 days, 5 months, or 50 years. There is a growing desperation to find God. Continuing with the quote, "The renewal of that relationship is what spurs believers to participate in spreading the gospel. Rather than relying on a relative handful of inspired preachers to promote a national revival, the emerging revolution is truly a grassroots explosion of commitment to God that will refine the church and result in a natural and widespread immersion in outreach." He is describing a group of people that have spent their time sitting in the pews, and they are now saying, "I'm done with this. It has not helped me find a deep and meaningful relationship with God. I am now embarking on my own journey, teaming up with similar people who are saying, we've got to find God." They are in many cases gathering in house churches. And out of that rediscovery of a real and authentic relationship with Jesus Christ, they are there then being reignited with an outreach focus to reach out and now share a real and meaningful relationship with their friends and neighbors. Henry Blackaby in his workbook, Experiencing God, and by the way, this workbook is part of our Phase 2 training. So get a head start. Get the workbook and take some time to go through it, and by the time you are in Phase 2 training, this workbook, you will be long into it and possibly completed. But in this workbook, Henry Blackaby says, "To be related to Christ is to be on mission with Him. You cannot be in relationship with Jesus and not be on mission. Jesus said, 'As the Father has sent I am sending you.' The heartbeat of Simple Church is to live, breathe, act, and be a missionary." Simple Church, I like to explain, is like the iPhone. The iPhone is very popular, several parts of the world. Personally, I don't have one. Kind of wish I did. But what is unique about the iPhone is its intuitive, very simple way that it operates. So Simple Church is like the iPhone. It is simple and it's refreshing. But on a little more serious note, Simple Church is missionally designed to empower a lay-led house church movement. It's missionally designed and it's missionally focused to reach secular and unchurched people with the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ. Basically, Simple Church is frontline missionary work. Now, if you take this iPhone, and if you were to open it up, it's not empty inside. There is a very efficient computer circuit board that makes the interface with the end user simple and refreshing. So it would not be fair to the iPhone to say that it's simplistic or it's easy. The same is true with Simple Church. It's not simplistic and it's not easy church. In our bodies, we have several different systems. We have a nervous system. We have a respiratory system. We have a number of additional systems. For those of you who are in computers know that a computer board has a number of different chips, and those chips control different systems on the computer board. Simple Church has 7 simple systems. These systems, for the most part, work behind the scenes, and they have been invented. We've had to invent this whole infrastructure under the umbrella of the North America division for Simple Church to operate and retain a simplicity and a refreshness that is the longing of so many Christians, and it becomes a safe place where secular and unchurched people can be introduced in an informal setting where they say, now there's something real and authentic here. I'm going to hang around. The first system is the Core 4 planting team. Simple churches begin with a Core 4 missionary team. We actually avoid the word now planting team because we realized it was doing Simple Church a disservice. When you think of conventional church planting, you think of a cool preacher, an incredible worship band, lots of programs, and a rented storefront. That is not at all what Simple Church missionaries do. So we begin to explain it in the context. Some of you may be familiar with a Adventist Frontier Missions. Adventist Frontier Missions is an organization that focuses on reaching primarily the 1040 window. And when missionaries, typically we think of flying overseas, they learn to eat new food, they learn a new language, they dress differently, they learn a new culture, they immerse themselves, and they do not try to attempt to keep one foot in conventional church back in the United States while the other foot is in the mission field, let's say Papua New Guinea. It's physically impossible for them to do both at the same time. It is similar with Simple Church. We are noticing that our strongest simple churches are those that actually embrace their call to be a missionary and immerse themselves and spend their time and energy and resources in reaching secular and unchurched people. Now, this doesn't mean you cut all ties and all friendships, but it does mean that you are focused. You have your focus on reaching the mission field. America is now, according to a number of sources, the 3rd largest recipient of missionaries in the world. So there's a Core 4 team, has a host, 2 co-leaders, and a details coordinator. This team is appointed and commissioned according to Titus chapter 1, verse 5. And what is unique about this missionary team is that they are self-directed and they have a heart for unchurched people. What is unique about this network is that there's no one to micromanage. And Simple Church missionaries have a deep conviction that they can no longer sit on the pew and consume the sermons and consume the special musics and pay their dues and call that good. But there is a rekindling of a burning and a fire within the souls of these missionaries. I've got to get out there and make a difference. Simple Church, the network, is providing a way for missionaries across North America and around the world to plug into a network, to go through some basic training, and then to empower them to go out to their mission field and empower them to do all the work of the ministry. That's the first system. Second system is the training process. There are 2 phases. Phase 1, you can go to the internet, simplechurchathome.com right now, and anyone around the world can go through phase 1 training. And I basically don't even know. It's off the radar screen. Once a person goes through phase 1, then they go through phase 2. Phase 2, yes, there's some additional training, but Phase 2 connects you in to the network and the resources that are provided for all Simple Church missionary teams. Some of those resources include some resources, some demographic resources that are provided by Percept and Link to Lead, which are two web pages, same company, two different web pages, that you can actually draw a circle around your house. You can customize a polygon around your house. You could draw the circle based on a zip code. You can do it on a radius around your house. You can do it on I mentioned a zip code. You can do it on a county base or multiple zip codes. And when you hit enter, it will give you a 6-page demographic summary of those living in the area that you defined. It's an amazing tool for house church missionary teams. There are some other resources. Some of you may be familiar with creationhealth.com. Florida Adventist Hospital has developed this resource, and in the process they asked me and my wife if we would be willing to write the small group curriculum for this resource, which, by the way, is now being used by a number of mega churches throughout North America, and in some of the Western cultures around the world. Some of the governments are even looking at incorporating it into some of their whole healthcare plan. And so my wife and I, we wrote a curriculum that was a small group curriculum. Our goal was that it would be used in a house church environment, so it fit our goals. They wanted to pay me. I said, don't give me any money for it. What I want is an unlimited lifetime subscription to the digital material that is provided by Creation Health. That is now available. Part of it, the rest of it's still coming, but it's now available to all Simple Church Core 4 teams in the Simple Church Network. Others of you may have heard of something called New Beginnings. It was originally put out by It Is Written. I mentioned It Is Written with Mark Findley earlier. It Is Written asked me to take the New Beginnings presentations and write a small group curriculum, which I did several years ago. It was designed for those in their 20s and early 30s. It was pilot tested by that group, and I have taken that resource and I have rewritten it as a resource to be used in simple churches, house churches. So again, these are just a sample of some of the resources that are available free of charge for Simple Church Core 4 teams that are partnering with the network. The third system is called the Shared Missionary Commitment. This commitment is the piece that moves a person from Phase 1 and into Phase 2 training. It is this missionary commitment that actually unites all of the Core 4 missionaries around the world. Another system is the Sabbath Gathering flow. This is the house church that I participate in, the Simple Church. All of our Simple Churches meet on Sabbath, and as I explained earlier, we are recapturing the New Testament biblical Sabbath. Some Simple Churches do start with lunch instead of breakfast. We have a number of children in ours. In fact, 50% of our attendants are children. So in the afternoon, we deal with naps and some of those things with the smaller ones. So we start at 10 o'clock with breakfast. At 11 o'clock, we have some singing. By the way, we don't use any PowerPoint. We don't have any songbooks. We have decided that we wanted to, in fact, we had to backtrack with our whole singing approach. We realized whether it was contemporary Christian or traditional hymns, secular and unchurched people knew neither of them. So we scrapped all that. We wanted this simple and reproducible at a grassroots level. So we teach the songs one at a time, and we went clear back to the song, Jesus Loves Me. There were people who did not even know that song. Following our singing, which now has expanded to several songs, and we like to include and really focus on scripture songs, because we want the people to have these words embedded in their mind so that the Lord can bring them back to their thoughts at key points throughout the week. Then we go into check-in and something we call God moments. I won't take the time to explain that now. We explain that more thoroughly in phase 2. Of course, if you have experienced a simple church, you already may have a handle on what that's about, but it's an amazing experience to go through check-in and God moments. Then we have a relational Bible study. The relational Bible study is different. It's not doctrinal. It's not life application. Phase 1 training spends about 90 minutes in phase 1 training teaching you how to facilitate a relational Bible study. During this relational Bible study, the children are typically in an age-appropriate activity that in our house church is coordinated by my wife. We have learned that children love simple church. And so we have a lot of family-oriented focus. After the relational Bible study, lunch usually starts around 1:30, give or take a half hour. The afternoon tends to vary. In general, a simple church experience on Sabbath is a 5-hour experience. Remember that we're about shifting paradigms now. Like it said in the video, it's not about going and, quote, doing church. Simple church is about becoming the church. And when you become the church, you don't sit down and expect a program and an entertainment show. You learn how to interact. And I'll be real candid. I had to go through major unlearning of what I spent 17 years of my life in conventional church doing. But I would never go back. The experiences are so rich and so deep and so meaningful. It's messy. In conventional church, you walk in, you smile, you shake a hand, you're dressed up to the hilt. You say, hi, happy Sabbath, you smile, and everyone knows you don't ask any more questions. But people's lives are falling apart, and they're discouraged, and they're looking for help and support and someone to pray. That doesn't happen sitting in the pew, looking at the back of someone's head. It really doesn't happen in the foyer of the church. But in simple church, the whole environment is conducive for meaningful relationships to develop and grow. And as people express concerns and they need help, like you saw in the video, the church in simple church rallies around that, prays for them, helps people financially, emotionally, spiritually. If you haven't experienced it, you just got to experience it. I can't explain it. It's a whole different paradigm. The next system is the financial system. Every week, each details coordinator sends a weekly financial report to our network financial coordinator. Tithe and offerings are always part of Simple Church, but we never take up an offering. We go into the details of that, how that works. It's been amazing to see how much money. We're talking thousands, well over 100,000 in the last year and a half, 18 months, has come into Simple Church, and we've never taken up an offering. People ask, what happens to tithe? What happens to the offering? All tithe is remitted back, sent back to a local conference in which the membership is held. We explain to people how tithe is then used. We do not keep any of the tithe. It is sent and it is used for missionaries, whether that be in the United States or overseas, who have given their lives to be full-time, kind of professional missionaries. The offering, though, is amazing. All offerings are used by the local simple church in which they were given to help people. We do not spend and use our offerings for inventory and asset items. That locks up money in inventory and assets, and we want to help people. We don't want to just produce programs to help people. We want to be able to help the people them directly and themselves. Of course, it makes it much easier because we have no building maintenance. We don't have people to hire, Bible workers to hire, staff salaries to pay, which means Simple Church, the network, and the local Simple Churches gatherings literally have thousands and thousands of dollars to help people. What we've learned is we help people, no strings attached. In today's culture, people do not trust the government, people do not trust conventional churches, and younger generations no longer trust marriage. And so even though people are coming to a home, they are coming with their guards up. Okay, this is an informal Bible study, it's a house church, it's simple church. And we have learned that we serve and help people with no strings attached. It was not long ago that a lady who had been coming for about 9 months said, when I first came, I was extremely suspicious of you guys. And it's taken me 9-10 months to realize that you would help me and I could walk away and that would be okay. The next system is the Core 4 accountability system. I've mentioned the weekly, no I haven't. Every week the details coordinator submits an online report where we track all kinds of information. It's where I can tell you, as of last weekend, 36% of the adult attendance in the Simple Church Network, 36% are unchurched people. That's phenomenal. And it's encouraging to me because I realize we're actually accomplishing what we're setting out to do. It is rare that you hear of any church in North America that actually has 36% of its adult attendance as secular and unchurched people. We track a lot of other data just so that we can get a sense of what's happening in the network. I've already talked about the weekly financial report. The Core 4 meetings, every Core 4 team is mentored by the Simple Church that birthed them. Early on in the birthing process and the launch, those Core 4 meetings are a monthly meeting. Maybe as time goes on, they go to an every other month or to a once a quarter. The next system is our connectedness. We wanted to actively keep people connected into the world church. We did not want fragmentation or disenchantedness to develop in house churches. That's not what it's about. It's about getting on with the mission that God has called every Christian to, and that is to go and be a disciple maker. Simple Church has honed our focus to empower lay people to have the freedom to do that and customize it for their local context. So we keep a connectedness in the network and to the world church in a number of different ways, and it's working extremely well. We have fusion gatherings. These are typically a quarterly gathering where there are a number of simple churches geographically close together. This turns out to be like a once a quarter gathering in a park. It's not where we gather the simple churches in a conventional church for a once a quarter real church experience, conventional church. Simple churches never grow up and become a real church. They multiply into more homes. We also use something called Spotlight on Missions. You may be familiar with that. Again, this is on the resource page that all Core 4 missionary teams have access to. There is a BRI newsletter. It stands for Biblical Research Institute newsletter that is shared. Of course, there are various publications, Adventist Review, Signs of the Times, camp meeting events. Often there are local conference statewide camp meeting events, and we encourage our simple churches to be included in those and to participate. It's a way of helping the simple churches. They're part of a much larger world church, and so camp meetings tend to be one of the fusion gatherings. Of course, the internet is unlimited in terms of the resources available for staying connected to the world church. So those are the 7. Again, this is just an introductory presentation. I haven't gone into a lot of detail, but you have access to my phone number and my email, and especially those who are church administrators listening to this, give me a call and let's work on answering questions and how we can expand in a formal partnership in your area. Okay, session 3, 10 characteristics of church planting movements. Grab a pencil and paper, because during this video clip, which is produced by the Baptist Church, their International Mission Board did some extensive research, and they have identified 10 characteristics of church planting movements. The sad part is that there is no identifiable church planting movement in North America. And as you listen to these characteristics, I think it will become evident. Especially pay attention to characteristics number 6, 7, and 8. And they say them rather quickly, so you might want to take and go around the circle in your group so that someone writes the first one, the next person writes the second one, and so on. And then we'll have a break where you can discuss it. So with that, enjoy the video clip.
Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told.
Like a mighty wave, God is moving, pouring out His grace in astounding and marvelous ways. His love is rolling over the barriers set by governments, skeptics, religious opponents, and even geography. God's passionate desire to embrace His world will not be denied. In Asia, a strategy coordinator began his work with only 3 churches and 85 believers. Today, there are reports of as many as 340,000 believers and 3,400 churches. In North Africa, an Arab Muslim cleric complained recently that more than 10,000 Muslims in the surrounding area